The accusation came without warning, like a blade to the throat. "You stole from me!" Victoria Whitmore's voice cut through the marble foyer of the Russo estate, each word dripping with venom. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Amara Hayes stood frozen, her cleaning supplies still clutched in trembling hands. The bucket of soapy water she'd been using to scrub the already spotless floors sloshed dangerously as her grip loosened. Around her, the other household staff had gone completely still, their eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from witnessing an execution. I don't understand, Miss Whitmore," Amara managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't taken anything." Victoria advanced like a predator stalking wounded prey, her 6-inch Louboutins clicking an ominous rhythm against the imported Italian tile. Everything about her screamed wealth and privilege. The perfectly highlighted blonde hair that fell in magazine-worthy waves, the Chanel suit that probably cost more than Amara made in 6 months, the engagement ring on her left hand that caught the light from the crystal chandelier overhead, throwing rainbow sparkles across the walls. "My grandmother's bracelet," Victoria hissed, her face twisted with theatrical rage. "The diamond bracelet that's been in my family for 3 generations. It was in my dressing room this morning, and now it's gone. You were the last person to clean that room." Amara's stomach dropped to her feet. She thought of her 5-year-old daughter Zara, waiting at her mother's apartment. Thought of the overdue electric bill sitting on her kitchen counter. Thought of how desperately she needed this job. How she'd worked 6 days a week for the past year to build a life for her baby girl after Zara's father had abandoned them both. "Miss Whitmore, I swear to you, I didn't take anything," Amara said, hating how her voice shook. "Please, just check the security cameras. They'll show—" "The cameras in my wing have been malfunctioning for weeks," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "Convenient timing, don't you think?" She turned to Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, who stood nearby looking stricken. "Call the police! I want her arrested for theft." "Please!" Amara heard herself beg, and shame burned through her chest. But pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when Zara's face flashed through her mind. "Please! I have a daughter. I need this job. I would never—" "You people always have excuses," Victoria said, her lips curling in disgust. "Always playing the victim. Well, not this time." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The words hit Amara like a physical slap. "You people." She'd heard those words before, had felt their weight her entire life, but hearing them here, in this place where she'd scrubbed and cleaned and worked herself to exhaustion, where she'd been professional and invisible and everything a good employee was supposed to be, it shattered something inside her. "I didn't steal from you," Amara said again, but her voice had gone flat. She knew how this ended. She'd seen it before, had lived it before. Her word against Victoria's. A black housemaid against a white socialite. The ending was already written. "Empty your pockets," Victoria demanded. Amara set down her cleaning supplies with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She turned out her pockets, empty except for a crumpled tissue and a hair tie. She opened her bag, dumping the contents on a nearby table. Her wallet with $37 inside. Her phone with the cracked screen she couldn't afford to replace. Her bus pass, a granola bar she'd been saving for her lunch break, and a crayon drawing Zara had made of the two of them holding hands beneath a smiling sun. No bracelet. "She must have hidden it somewhere," Victoria said, undeterred. "Check the supply closets, the laundry room. Search everywhere she's been today." "This is insane," Amara whispered. "Why would I risk everything for—" "Because you're greedy," Victoria snapped. "Because people like you see what we have and think you deserve it. Well, you don't. You work for us. You serve us. And when you forget your place, there are consequences." The air in the foyer had gone thick and toxic. The other staff members wouldn't meet Amara's eyes. Mrs. Chen looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. And Amara stood there, feeling smaller and more powerless than she had in years, watching her life crumble over a crime she hadn't committed. She didn't see him at first. Didn't notice the man who'd appeared at the top of the grand staircase, silent as smoke. Didn't realize they had an audience until his voice cut through Victoria's tirade like a knife through silk. "What?" Dante Russo said softly. "Is going on here?" The temperature in the room plummeted. Amara had worked in the Russo estate for a year, and in all that time, she'd seen Dante Russo perhaps a dozen times. He was always leaving before dawn or returning long after midnight, a shadow moving through his own house. The staff whispered about him in hushed tones, about his business dealings that weren't quite legal, about the men who came to meet him in his study at odd hours, about the cold expression he wore like armor. Now, as he descended the staircase with predatory grace, Amara understood why everyone feared him. Dante Russo was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the controlled power of a man who knew exactly how dangerous he was. His black suit was impeccably tailored, emphasizing his athletic build. Dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and intensity. But it was his eyes that made Amara's breath catch. Steel gray, cold as a winter storm, and currently fixed on Victoria with an expression that made the socialite actually take a step back. "Dante, darling." Victoria recovered quickly, her voice switching to honey-sweet. "I was just handling a small staff issue. Nothing for you to worry about." I asked what was going on. His voice remained quiet, but something in his tone made it clear he wouldn't ask again. This maid," Victoria gestured dismissively at Amara, "stole my grandmother's diamond bracelet, the one you know I keep in my dressing room. I was just about to call the police and have her arrested." Dante's gaze shifted to Amara, and she felt pinned by it. Those gray eyes swept over her, taking in her worn uniform, her trembling hands, the tears she was fighting desperately not to shed. Something flickered in his expression. She couldn't name it, but it made her chest tighten. "You," he said. "What's your name?" "Amara Hayes, sir," she managed. "Did you take the bracelet, Amara Hayes?" "No, sir. I would never—" "She's lying," Victoria interjected. "Obviously I wasn't speaking to you." Dante didn't raise his voice, didn't even look at Victoria. But his words landed like a slap, and Victoria's mouth snapped shut, shock flickering across her perfect features. Dante turned to Mrs. Chen. "How long has she worked here?" "1 year, Mr. Russo," Mrs. Chen said, standing straighter. "She's been exemplary. Never late, never complained, works harder than anyone else on staff. Has anything ever gone missing before?" "No, sir. Nothing." Dante nodded slowly, then looked back at Amara. "You have a daughter?" It wasn't a question, but Amara answered anyway. "Yes, sir. Zara. She's 5. You're here 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when we have events." "Yes, sir." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. I need the work, sir. It's just me and Zara. Her father isn't—" She stopped, unsure why she was telling him this. "I need this job." Something in Dante's expression shifted. He turned to Victoria, and the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. "Where exactly was this bracelet?" "In my dressing room, in the jewelry box on my vanity," Victoria said, her confidence wavering slightly under his stare. "I saw it this morning when I was getting ready, and when I went back an hour ago, it was gone. She was the only one who cleaned my room today." "Show me." It wasn't a request. Victoria blinked. "Dante, there's no need." "Show me." They moved as a group up the stairs, Victoria leading with nervous energy, Dante following with that predatory grace, and Amara trailing behind with Mrs. Chen's hand on her elbow in silent support. The other staff scattered, wanting no part of whatever was about to happen. Victoria's suite was on the 3rd floor, a sprawling collection of rooms that included a bedroom larger than Amara's entire apartment, a bathroom with a soaking tub and walk-in shower, and a dressing room that looked like a high-end boutique. Clothes hung in color-coordinated rows, shoes lined shelves like art installations, and jewelry glittered from multiple displays. "There!" Victoria pointed to an ornate jewelry box on the vanity. "That's where I keep it. The bracelet was right on top this morning." Dante moved to the vanity, his eyes scanning the surface. Then he did something unexpected. He dropped to one knee and looked underneath the furniture. "Dante, what are you—" He reached under the vanity and pulled something out. When he straightened, a diamond bracelet dangled from his fingers, catching the light and throwing sparkles across the room. The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible," Victoria stammered, her face going pale. "It wasn't there. I checked. I specifically checked before I—" She stopped abruptly, as if realizing she'd said too much. Dante's expression was utterly blank, which somehow made him more terrifying. "Before you what, Victoria?" "Before I came downstairs." Victoria finished weakly. I must have knocked it off without realizing.
Must have.
Dante's voice was soft, deadly. He turned to Amara.
Mrs. Hayes, I apologize for the distress this has caused you. Please return to your duties.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Amara's legs felt weak with relief. She started toward the door, Mrs. Chen beside her.
Actually,
Dante said, and they both stopped.
Mrs. Chen, please give Mrs. Hayes the rest of the day off, paid, and arrange for a car to take her home.
Of course, sir. That's really not necessary, Amara began.
It is.
Dante's gray eyes met hers, and she saw something in them she couldn't name.
You've been through an ordeal. Go home to your daughter.
Amara nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. As she and Mrs. Chen left the room, she heard Victoria's voice rise behind them, shrill and defensive.
Dante, you can't seriously believe that I…
The door closed, cutting off whatever else she said. Amara sat in the back of the town car, a luxury she'd never experienced, and watched the city blur past the tinted windows. Her hands were still shaking, adrenaline still pumping through her veins. She kept replaying the scene, kept seeing Dante Russo's cold gray eyes, kept hearing Victoria's words. You people? Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. How is work, baby? Amara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How did she even begin to explain? She settled for fine, coming to pick up Zara now. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, caught her gaze in the rearview mirror.
Rough day?
You could say that. Amara managed a weak smile.
Mr. Russo's a good man,
the driver said.
Fair. He doesn't let injustice stand, if you know what I mean.
Amara thought about how Dante had defended her, how he'd actually gotten on his knees to look under that vanity, how he'd sent her home with pay and his own driver. Yeah, she said softly. I'm starting to see that. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Because back at the Russo estate, in Victoria's dressing room, Dante Russo was having a conversation that would alter the course of multiple lives.
It fell under the vanity,
Victoria was saying, her voice desperate now. It was an honest mistake, Dante. I overreacted. You know how emotional I get about my grandmother's things. Dante stood at the window, hands in his pockets, his back to her.
Do you think I'm stupid, Victoria?
What?
No, of course not. Do you think,
he continued in that same quiet voice,
that I don't notice things? That I don't pay attention?
He turned, and Victoria actually flinched at his expression.
The cameras in your wing aren't malfunctioning. They never were. I checked them 20 minutes ago.
Victoria's face drained of color.
I watched you take that bracelet from your jewelry box this morning,
Dante continued.
Watched you place it under the vanity yourself. Watched you check to make sure it was hidden. Then I watched you call Mrs. Hayes to your room to clean it, knowing she'd be the last person there before you discovered it missing. Dante, I can explain. You framed an innocent woman.
His voice was soft, but each word landed like a hammer.
A single mother who works herself to exhaustion to provide for her child. You tried to have her arrested, tried to destroy her life. And for what? Because you were jealous?
Jealous! Victoria's voice went shrill. Of the help? Are you insane?
I see how you look at me when I'm around her, Dante said. I see how you watch when I ask her questions, when I thank her for her work. You've been possessive and paranoid for months, Victoria. I ignored it because I thought it would pass. I was wrong.
Victoria moved toward him, desperation replacing shock. Dante, please. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. You know I've been stressed with the wedding planning, with my father's expectations. I don't care. The words were final, absolute. I don't care about your excuses or your stress. You showed me exactly who you are today, Victoria. You're cruel. You're a racist. And you're someone who would destroy an innocent person to satisfy your own insecurities. You're ending our engagement over a maid? Victoria's voice rose to a shriek.
Over some nobody? I'm ending our engagement,
Dante said coldly.
Because you're not the woman I thought I was marrying. Because I won't spend my life with someone capable of such cruelty. Because Amara Hayes…
He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words.
Because that nobody has more integrity and courage than you'll ever possess.
He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket. Victoria had left it on the vanity when she'd removed it to wash her hands, and placed it on the dresser.
You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and leave my house. I'll have a statement released to the press about our mutual decision to end the engagement. Your reputation will remain intact. But Victoria?" She looked up at him with tear-stained cheeks. "If you ever contact Amara Hayes again, if you ever speak her name, if you even think about retaliating against her in any way, I will destroy you and your father's company. That's not a threat. That's a promise."
Victoria stared at him, mascara running down her face, and seemed to finally understand that this was real, that she'd lost.
"You'll regret this," she whispered. "The only thing I regret," Dante said, "is not seeing who you really were sooner."
He left her standing in her dressing room, surrounded by clothes that cost more than most people made in a year, crying tears that no one cared about. 3 days passed before Amara heard anything about what had happened. She'd returned to work the day after the incident, terrified she'd be fired anyway, that Dante's momentary kindness wouldn't last. But Mrs. Chen had greeted her warmly, had told her that Victoria Whitmore would no longer be visiting the estate, and that Mr. Russo had specifically requested Amara remain on staff with a raise and a more flexible schedule that would allow her to spend more time with her daughter. Amara had wanted to thank him, to express her gratitude, but Dante Russo was a ghost in his own home. She never saw him. Until the third night, when she was finishing up in the library and heard footsteps behind her.
"Amara!"
She spun around, heart racing. Dante stood in the doorway, still in his suit from whatever business he'd been conducting, but looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. There were shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw. "Mr. Russo," she said, setting down her dust cloth. I wanted to thank you. For everything. For defending me. For the raise. For—" "You don't need to thank me," he interrupted. "I did what anyone with basic decency should do." "Not everyone would have," Amara said quietly. "Not everyone does." Something flickered in his expression. He moved further into the library, maintaining careful distance.
"How is your daughter? Zara?"
The fact that he remembered her name made Amara's chest tighten.
"She's good. Happy. Doesn't know anything about what happened." "Good."
Dante was quiet for a moment, seemed to be weighing his words.
"I wanted to apologize. For Victoria, for what she put you through. I should have seen what kind of person she was before things went that far. You're not responsible for her actions, aren't I?"
His smile was bitter.
"I brought her into this house. I was going to marry her. That makes me complicit in some way."
"You ended it," Amara pointed out. "You chose to do the right thing. That matters." Dante looked at her then, really looked at her, and Amara felt something shift in the air between them. His gray eyes weren't cold anymore. They were intense, searching, and she felt pinned by them.
"Do you know why I really ended it?"
he asked softly. Amara shook her head, not trusting her voice.
"Because when I saw you standing there, terrified and brave and fighting tears you refused to let fall, I realized something."
He took a step closer.
"I realized that I'd never looked at Victoria the way I look at you.
That I'd never felt my chest tighten when she entered a room. That I'd never found myself wondering what she was thinking,
what made her smile, what her dreams were."
Amara's breath caught. "Mr. Russo."
"Dante," he corrected. "And I know this is inappropriate. I know I'm your employer, and you're my employee, and there are 1,000 reasons this is wrong. But I can't stop thinking about you, Amara. Haven't been able to since the day you knocked over that vase in the East Wing and apologized so profusely I thought you might actually cry."
Amara remembered that day 6 months ago, how embarrassed she'd been, how he'd simply said it was ugly anyway and had it thrown out. How he'd made her feel less mortified. "This is insane," she whispered.
"You're you, and you're extraordinary," Dante said. "You're a single mother who works harder than anyone I've ever met. You're kind and honest and brave. You're everything Victoria pretended to be and never was. I clean your house for a living. You think I care about that?" His voice was fierce now. "Amara, I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, power, connections. You're the first person in years who looks at me and just sees a person. Do you have any idea how rare that is?"
Amara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest.
"Dante, I have a daughter. I have responsibilities. I can't—" "I know." He stepped back, giving her space. "I'm not asking you for anything right now. I just wanted you to know, to understand why I did what I did. Because it wasn't just about doing the right thing. It was about you.
The confession hung between them, heavy and charged. What happens now? Amara finally asked. Now? Dante's smile was sad. Now, I go back to pretending I don't watch for you every morning. Now you go back to your work, and I go back to mine. And maybe, if you're willing, we see if this thing between us is real or just a moment born from crisis.
And if it's real, then we figure it out,
Dante said simply.
Together.
Amara knew she should say no, should protect herself and Zara from the complications that came with a man like Dante Russo, should maintain the professional distance that kept them safe. But she thought about how he'd defended her without hesitation, how he'd ended his engagement over her, how he looked at her like she mattered. Okay, she heard herself whisper. Okay. The smile that transformed Dante's face was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Yeah? Yeah. Amara's own smile felt shaky but real. But Dante, if we do this, if we try this, I need you to promise me something. Anything.
Don't treat me like I'm fragile. Don't try to rescue me or fix my life or turn me into something I'm not. I'm with you because I want to be, not because I need to be. Understand?
Dante moved closer, slowly enough that she could have stepped back but didn't. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle.
I understand. Partners, Amara. In everything.
When he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise, Amara felt something in her chest unfurl like a flower toward the sun. It was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely insane, and it felt like coming home. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful secrecy. Dante and Amara moved around each other like dancers learning complicated choreography. He'd find reasons to be in whatever room she was cleaning. She'd linger in the library, knowing he worked there late at night. They talked about everything, her dreams of eventually opening a bakery, his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, the weight of running an empire built on foundations she was only beginning to understand. He met Zara on a Saturday afternoon, when Amara had no choice but to bring her daughter to work after her mother fell ill. Amara had been terrified, certain this would be the moment Dante realized the reality of her life was too complicated, too messy for whatever fantasy he'd built in his head. Instead, she'd found him on the floor of the library, having an earnest discussion with her 5-year-old about which dinosaurs were the coolest. The T-Rex is overrated, Zara had declared with the absolute certainty only children possessed. Velociraptors are way smarter.
You make an excellent point, Dante had replied seriously. Intelligence over brute strength. That's good strategy.
Watching them together had made Amara's heart do dangerous things in her chest. But they were careful. So careful. No one on staff knew about them except Mrs. Chen, who'd caught them holding hands in the kitchen one early morning and had simply smiled and said, "About time." They never showed affection where anyone could see. Never gave any indication their relationship had changed. Because Dante's world was dangerous in ways Amara was only beginning to understand. She'd known he was wealthy, known his business dealings weren't entirely legitimate, but it wasn't until she'd been with him for a month that she truly grasped what his life entailed. It was a Tuesday evening. Amara had stayed late to organize the wine cellar, a task she'd volunteered for because it meant she might see Dante when he returned from his meeting. She was cataloging bottles of wine that cost more than her monthly rent when she heard raised voices from upstairs.
You're making a mistake, Russo.
The voice was unfamiliar, heavily accented. Russian, maybe.
Moretti won't take this disrespect lying down. Then tell Moretti,
Dante's voice, cold as ice,
that if he has a problem with how I run my territory, he can bring it to me directly instead of sending his dog to bark threats.
Amara froze, her hand still on a bottle of Bordeaux. Territory. Threats. This was the world Dante lived in, the world he'd been trying to shield her from.
You think you're untouchable,
the other man said.
You think because you got the politicians in your pocket, the judges on your payroll, that you can do whatever you want. But everyone falls eventually, Russo. Everyone. Is that a threat, Volkov? It's a promise.
Amara heard footsteps, then Dante's voice, quieter now but somehow more menacing.
Let me make you a promise in return. You come into my house. You threaten me under my own roof. You forget who holds power in this city. I could have you killed before you reach your car. I could make you disappear so completely your own mother wouldn't be able to find your body. But I'm going to be generous today. I'm going to let you walk out of here and deliver my message to Moretti. Stay out of my business, stay out of my territory, and we'll have no problems. But if he pushes me—" the pause was loaded with violence. "If he pushes me, I'll burn his entire operation to the ground."
Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd known Dante was dangerous. But hearing him speak so casually about murder, about making people disappear, it drove home exactly what kind of man she'd fallen for. The footsteps retreated. A door slammed. Then silence. Amara stood in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth thousands of dollars, and tried to reconcile the man who'd threatened murder with the man who'd sat on the floor discussing dinosaurs with her daughter.
"You heard all that."
She spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He'd loosened his tie, and there was a tension in his shoulders she'd never seen before. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," Amara said. "I was just—"
"I know."
He moved into the cellar, but kept his distance.
"This is the part where you tell me you can't do this anymore, where you realize what I actually am and decide it's too dangerous for you and Zara."
Amara studied him. In the dim light of the wine cellar, he looked exhausted and dangerous, and somehow vulnerable all at once.
"Is it true? What you said about making him disappear?" "Yes."
No hesitation. No attempt to soften the truth.
"Have you?"
Amara asked quietly.
"Made people disappear?" "Yes."
Dante's gray eyes met hers.
"I've done things, Amara. Terrible things. Things I can't take back and wouldn't even if I could, because they kept my family safe, kept my business intact, kept me alive in a world where weakness gets you killed. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest with you."
He moved closer.
"You need to know what you're getting into. Dating me isn't just complicated because I'm your employer or because we're from different worlds. It's dangerous. I have enemies, Amara. People who would hurt you or Zara to get to me. And if you stay, if we do this, you need to accept that your life will never be simple again."
Amara thought about Victoria's cruelty, thought about Zara's father abandoning them, thought about all the times men had let her down or hurt her or proven themselves to be less than they claimed. Then she thought about Dante, who'd defended her without hesitation, who'd ended his engagement over her, who looked at her daughter with genuine warmth instead of viewing her as an inconvenience.
"I'm scared,"
she admitted.
"I'm terrified, actually. But Dante, I grew up in neighborhoods where people got shot for looking at someone wrong. I've had men twice your size corner me in dark parking lots. I've known danger my whole life. This is just a different kind." "That's not the same." "No, it's not," Amara interrupted. "But here's the thing. With you, I feel safer than I have in years. Because I know you'd protect us. I know you'd burn the whole world down before you'd let anyone hurt Zara. And maybe that should scare me more than it does. But it doesn't. It just makes me—"
She stopped, unsure how to finish.
"Makes you what?"
Dante asked softly. "Makes me love you more." The words hung between them, raw and honest. Amara hadn't planned to say them, hadn't meant to confess feelings she'd been trying to keep locked away. But they were true. Despite everything, despite the danger and the complications and the insanity of it all, she loved him. Dante closed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like a drowning man finding air.
"I love you,"
he said against her lips.
"God, Amara, I love you so much it terrifies me. I look at you and Zara, and I want things I never thought I could have. I want mornings waking up next to you. I want to teach your daughter to ride a bike. I want normal and domestic and real."
"We can have that," Amara said.
"It won't be simple, but we can have it. I need to keep you safe."
His hands framed her face.
"Both of you. That means security, precautions, things that might feel invasive or controlling. Can you trust me on that?"
Amara thought about the threat she'd just overheard, about the Russian who'd promised Dante would fall eventually.
"Yes, but Dante, I need you to trust me too. Don't shut me out when things get dangerous. Don't make decisions about my life without talking to me first. We're partners, remember?" "Partners," Dante agreed. Then, more quietly, "Move in with me."
Amara blinked.
"What?" "Move in. You and Zara. Not as my employee. You can keep working if you want, or I can help you start that bakery you dream about, but move in as my family. Let me take care of you both. Let me—"
He stopped, seemed to reconsider.
I'm doing this wrong. This isn't me being controlling or making decisions for you. This is me asking you to build a life with me. Dante, that's a huge step. Zara barely knows you, and my mother will think I'm moving too fast and not good enough for you, and she'll be right on both counts.
Dante finished.
But Amara, after what just happened, after Volkov came into my house making threats, I need to know you're safe. Both of you. Here. I can protect you. I can make sure nothing and no one touches you.
Amara wanted to say yes. Wanted it so badly her chest ached. But she thought about Zara. About uprooting her daughter's entire life. About moving into a world of wealth and danger that was so far from anything they'd known. Let me think about it, she said finally. Let me talk to Zara. Prepare her. This is huge, Dante. We can't just...
Take all the time you need.
He kissed her forehead. Just promise me you'll be careful. Extra security on your apartment building. A driver to take you to and from work. A phone that connects directly to my head of security. That seems excessive.
It's necessary.
His voice was firm. Please, Amara. Let me do this. Looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine fear there, Amara nodded. Okay. But Dante, if this is going to work, you need to tell me what's really going on. Who's Moretti? What did Volkov want? I can't protect myself and Zara if I don't know what we're up against. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand and led her out of the wine cellar, through the house to his private study. He locked the door behind them and poured them both drinks. Vodka for him, whiskey for her.
Moretti runs the Italian family south of the city, he began. We've had a truce for years, carved the territory up between us, but he's been pushing boundaries lately, moving product through my shipping lanes, trying to poach my distributors. I warned him to back off. He didn't listen.
So, you did something, Amara gasped. I seized one of his shipments. $2 million worth of product, gone in a night. Dante's smile was cold.
I sent it back to him piece by piece along with a message. Respect the boundaries or lose everything. And Volkov works for him. Volkov works for himself. But he's allied with Moretti. The Russian syndicates and the Italian families have been trying to push me out for years. They think because I'm younger, because I inherited this empire instead of building it from the ground up, that I'm weak. They're wrong.
Amara sipped her whiskey, processing. What happens now?
Now Moretti has two choices. Back down or escalate. If he's smart, he'll back down. If he's proud...
Dante's jaw tightened.
If he's proud, things get messy. And we get caught in the middle. No.
Dante's voice was absolute.
You and Zara stay far away from the mess. That's not negotiable, Amara. Whatever happens between me and Moretti, you're protected.
How can you promise that?
Because I'm very good at what I do.
He set down his glass and pulled her close. Because I have resources and connections and people who owe me favors. Because I've been preparing for war since the day I took over this empire, and I'm ready. Amara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart.
This is insane. I should be running in the opposite direction.
Why aren't you? Because, Amara said quietly, I've been taking care of myself and Zara alone for so long, I forgot what it feels like to have someone in my corner, someone who actually gives a damn about what happens to us. And you, Dante Russo, for all your danger and darkness and criminal empire, you make me feel like I matter, like we matter.
You do matter.
His arms tightened around her.
More than anything else in this world.
They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, while outside the study walls, forces aligned against them, and the clock ticked toward inevitable conflict. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The attack came 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Amara had taken Zara to her mother's apartment in the morning, then headed to the Russo estate for her shift. Dante had been gone since dawn, handling what he'd vaguely described as business complications. Mrs. Chen had seemed tense all morning, and the security guards who usually stayed near the perimeter had moved closer to the house. Something was wrong. Amara was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard the first gunshot. The sound was distant, muffled, but unmistakable. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where gunfire was common enough that she'd learned to distinguish between fireworks and the real thing. This was real. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her face pale.
Come with me. Now.
What's happening?
No time. Move.
Mrs. Chen grabbed Amara's wrist and pulled her toward a door Amara had never noticed before, hidden behind a panel in the kitchen wall. It opened onto a staircase leading down into darkness. "There's a safe room in the basement," Mrs. Chen said, already descending. "Mr. Russo's orders. If there's ever an attack, all non-security staff go there immediately." "Attack?" Amara's voice rose. "Who's attacking?" More gunshots, closer now. Shouts. The sound of breaking glass. They reached the bottom of the stairs, and Mrs. Chen pressed her palm against a scanner. A reinforced steel door slid open, revealing a room that looked like something from a spy movie. Concrete walls, surveillance monitors showing different angles of the estate, enough supplies to last weeks. 4 other staff members were already inside, their faces frightened. "Lock it behind us," Mrs. Chen ordered. The door slid shut with a definitive thunk. Amara moved to the monitors, watching in horror as armed men swarmed the estate grounds. They wore dark tactical gear, moved with military precision, and were met by Dante's security force with equal violence. It was a war zone. "Where's Dante?" Amara demanded. "En route," Mrs. Chen said, her phone pressed to her ear. "He's 10 minutes out. His team is holding the perimeter until—" She stopped, listening. "Understood." She hung up and looked at Amara. "He wants me to tell you that you're safe, that no one will get to this room, and that he's going to kill everyone responsible for this." Amara's hands were shaking. She thought about Zara, safe at her mother's apartment across town. Thought about how Dante had insisted on posting guards there too, precautions that had seemed excessive at the time but now felt like salvation. "Who's doing this?" she asked. "Moretti." Mrs. Chen's voice was grim. "He's escalating." They watched the monitors as the battle raged. Dante's men were well-trained, well-armed, and fighting with the kind of coordination that spoke to years of preparation. But Moretti's forces had numbers, and they kept coming. Then Amara saw him. Dante's car screamed through the front gates, followed by 3 more vehicles. He emerged from the back seat like an avenging angel, a gun in each hand, his face a mask of cold fury. What followed was the most terrifying and mesmerizing thing Amara had ever witnessed. Dante moved through the attackers like a force of nature. Every shot he fired found its target. Every decision he made was instantaneous and precise. This wasn't the man who'd sat on the floor discussing dinosaurs with her daughter. This was the Mafia boss who'd built an empire on violence and fear. Within 15 minutes, it was over. Bodies littered the grounds. The surviving attackers were on their knees, hands behind their heads, surrounded by Dante's men. And Dante stood in the center of it all, blood on his shirt and death in his eyes. He pulled out his phone, and a moment later, Mrs. Chen's phone rang. "Send her up," Dante said. "Just her." Mrs. Chen looked at Amara. "He wants you." Amara's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to move. The safe room door opened, and she climbed the stairs back into a kitchen that now smelled like gunpowder and fear. Dante stood in the foyer, talking in rapid Italian to a man who looked like he'd seen hell. When he saw Amara, his entire demeanor shifted. He moved to her in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms, and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, pulling back to look her over. "No." "Dante, what?" "Zara. Safe. At my mom's with your guards." Relief flooded his face. "Thank God." Amara looked past him at the carnage visible through the shattered windows. "What happens now?" "Now," Dante said, his voice returning to that cold, dangerous tone. "I send a message that no one will ever forget." He released her, turned to the kneeling prisoners. One of them, a man who looked like he was in charge, stared at Dante with defiant hatred. "Tell Moretti," Dante said conversationally, "that this was his one warning. If he ever comes near my home again, if he ever threatens what's mine again, I won't just kill him. I'll erase his entire bloodline. His children, his grandchildren, everyone who carries his name. I'll burn his empire to the ground and salt the earth so nothing ever grows there again. Do you understand?" The man spat blood at Dante's feet. Dante's smile was terrifying. "Good. Then you'll make an excellent example." "Dante," Amara started. He looked back at her, and something in his expression softened. "Go inside, Doragaya. You don't need to see this." "I'm not leaving you." "Amara, partners," she said firmly. "Remember? I'm not some fragile flower who needs to be protected from reality.
This is your world, and if I'm going to be in it, I need to see all of it.
Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly.
All right, but stay behind me.
What followed was brutal and efficient. Dante questioned the prisoners, extracting information with methods that made Amara's stomach turn, but that she forced herself to witness. When he was satisfied he had everything he needed, he made a phone call.
It's done,
he said into the phone.
Yes, all of them. Tell Moretti he has 24 hours to get out of the city. After that, everyone who works for him is a target.
He paused, listened.
I don't care about neutral ground. He violated mine. There are consequences.
He hung up and turned to his head of security.
Clean this up. I want it like it never happened. And double the security detail on Mrs. Hayes' mother's apartment. Triple it. Yes, sir.
Dante finally looked at Amara.
You should go home. Check on Zara. I'll have a car and full security escort. I'm not leaving.
Amara interrupted.
Amara, you can't stay here tonight. It's not safe. Then I'll go to a hotel.
She moved closer, lowering her voice.
Dante, I just watched you wage war on your front lawn. I saw you threaten to murder children. If you think I'm just going to go home and pretend this didn't happen, you don't know me at all.
Dante's jaw tightened.
What do you want from me?
I want you to talk to me, Amara said. Really talk to me. Not the sanitized version where you pretend you're not a criminal. I want to know what I'm really dealing with. What Zara and I are really getting into if we stay with you. They stared at each other, the space between them charged with tension.
All right,
Dante said finally.
But not here. Let me handle this cleanup. Make sure everything's secure. Then we'll go somewhere private, and I'll tell you everything.
3 hours later, Amara sat across from Dante in a penthouse apartment she hadn't known he owned, watching the city lights twinkle below them. He'd showered and changed, but there was still a hardness to his eyes that hadn't been there before.
My father,
Dante began,
built this empire from nothing. He came to this country with $100 and a willingness to do whatever it took to survive. That included violence, extortion, murder. By the time he died, he controlled half the city's illegal operations. Drugs, weapons, gambling, protection rackets, everything.
He poured himself vodka, drank it in one swallow.
I inherited it when I was 25. I didn't want it. I'd spent 4 years at Harvard, had planned to go legitimate, build something clean. But my father was murdered by a rival family, and suddenly I was responsible for an empire and everyone who depended on it. Hundreds of people whose livelihoods came from the businesses my father had built.
So you took over, Amara said quietly.
So I took over.
Dante refilled his glass.
And I discovered I was good at it. Better than my father, actually. I modernized operations, cleaned up the worst of the violence, made strategic alliances. Within 5 years, I doubled our territory and income. I became the youngest Don in the city's history. Don? Leader. Boss. The man everyone else answers to.
His smile was bitter.
I'm not just part of the Mafia, Amara. I run it. Every illegal operation in the Northern Territories goes through me. I control judges, politicians, police captains. I have people killed when they step out of line. I've tortured men for information. I've burned businesses to the ground over matters of principle.
He looked at her, and Amara saw the challenge in his eyes. He was testing her, waiting for her to flinch, to run. Why did Moretti attack today? She asked instead. Dante's eyebrows rose slightly.
Because I seized his shipment, and he took it as a declaration of war. Because he's old school, thinks violence is the answer to everything. Because he's stupid enough to believe attacking my home would make me back down instead of unleashing hell on him. Will you? Unleash hell? Yes.
No hesitation.
I've already made the calls. By morning, Moretti's operations will be in chaos. His suppliers will refuse to work with him. His distributors will vanish. His political protection will evaporate. Within a week, he'll be begging me for mercy. And will you give it to him? No. Dante's voice was ice. He came into my home. He threatened my staff. He put you in danger. There's no mercy for that.
Amara absorbed this, tried to reconcile it with everything she knew about Dante. What about the children you threatened? Did you mean that?
No.
For the first time, something like shame flickered in his expression.
I would never harm children. But Moretti needed to believe I would. Fear is a weapon, Amara. Sometimes the most effective one. So you lied. I lied.
He moved to sit beside her.
I lie. I manipulate. I threaten, I kill. That's who I am. That's what my world requires. And if you stay with me, you're accepting all of that. You're accepting that I'm a criminal, that I've done terrible things, that I will continue to do terrible things to protect what's mine.
Amara looked at him. This beautiful, dangerous man who'd defended her, who'd ended his engagement over her, who'd held her daughter so gently. Can I ask you something? Anything. That man you questioned today, the one you sent to deliver your message, what will happen to him? Dante's expression closed off.
You don't want to know. Yes, I do. He'll be killed.
Dante's voice was flat.
Painfully. As an example to anyone else who thinks about coming after me. Even though he was just following orders, there are no innocent soldiers in this war, Amara. Everyone makes choices. He chose to attack
my home. Now he faces the consequences. Amara stood, moved to the window. She thought about Zara, about the life she'd been trying to build, about how far she'd come from the scared girl who'd gotten pregnant at 19. She thought about how hard she'd worked for every scrap of security she had, and she thought about Dante, who looked at her like she hung the moon, who'd wage war to keep her safe, who'd offer her a life beyond anything she'd ever imagined. I can't be part of the violence, she said finally. I won't help you hurt people, won't be complicit in that part of your life. But Dante, I also can't pretend I don't understand why you do it. I grew up watching people like you control my neighborhood. I know the reality of this world. She turned to face him. So here's what I need. I need you to keep that part of your life separate from me and Zara. I need to know that when you come home, you're not bringing death with you. Her voice cracked. I need to be able to sleep at night knowing that the man I love isn't a monster, even if he does monstrous things. Dante stood, crossed to her.
I can't change what I am, Amara, but I can promise you this. I will never hurt an innocent person. Every person I've killed, every person I've hurt, they were in the game. They knew the risks. And I will always, always keep you and Zara separate from that world.
Can you, though? Amara asked.
Today proved that's not really possible. Moretti attacked your home. What's to stop someone else from coming after us?
Me. Dante's voice was absolute.
I'm what stops them. Because after what I do to Moretti, after the example I make of him, no one will dare touch you or Zara. They'll know that the price for harming my family is total annihilation.
Family? The word hung between them. Is that what we are? Amara whispered. Your family?
You're everything, Dante said. You and Zara. You're the reason I get up in the morning. The reason I want to build something better than what my father left me. You make me want to be more than just a criminal, Amara. You make me want to be a man worthy of you.
Tears spilled down Amara's cheeks.
I'm so scared. I know.
He pulled her close.
But I've got you. I've got both of you. And I swear on everything I am, nothing will ever hurt you while I'm alive.
Amara buried her face in his chest and let herself believe him. Let herself imagine a future where this could work, where she could love a man like Dante Russo and keep her daughter safe and build something real from the ashes of violence. It was insane. It was impossible. But as Dante held her in the darkness, with the city lights twinkling below them and danger lurking in every shadow, Amara realized she'd already made her choice. She was all in. 6 months after the attack, Amara stood in the master bedroom of the Russo estate, her bedroom now, and watched Dante sleep. The morning light filtered through the curtains, painting his face in soft gold. He looked peaceful, younger somehow, the hard edges of the Mafia boss smoothed away by sleep. His arm was thrown across her pillow, as if even unconscious he was reaching for her. So much had changed. She and Zara had moved in 3 weeks after Moretti's attack. Dante had kept his word. Moretti had been destroyed so completely that his name was now spoken as a cautionary tale. The message had been received. Dante Russo's family was untouchable. Zara had adapted with the resilience of children, delighted by her enormous new bedroom, the gardens to play in, and the man who read her bedtime stories every night without fail. She called him Mr. Dante, and followed him around like a devoted puppy, chattering about school and friends and everything that mattered in a 6-year-old's world. Amara's mother had taken longer to accept the situation, but even she had softened when she saw how Dante treated her daughter and granddaughter. He loves you, she'd said finally. Really loves you? I can see it. The past 6 months had been a revelation. Dante had shown her parts of himself she suspected few people ever saw. His dry humor, his surprising knowledge of baking techniques, the way he'd tear up during animated movies when he thought no one was watching. They'd built routines, traditions, a life together that felt real and solid despite the darkness that still lurked at the edges. But that darkness never fully disappeared. Dante still left for business at odd hours, still took phone calls he stepped away to answer, still came home sometimes with tension in his shoulders that spoke of violence conducted and decisions made. Amara had learned not to ask about those nights, had learned to trust that he was keeping his promise to shield her and Zara from the worst of his world. Until the morning, everything changed. Dante's phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he woke instantly, the reflexes of a man who'd lived with danger too long. He checked the screen, and Amara saw his expression harden. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing. Go back to sleep." He was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with swift efficiency. "Dante, it's handled, Amara. I just need to take care of something." But she saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hand automatically checked the gun holster he wore under his jacket. This wasn't routine business. This was something else. "Don't lie to me," she said quietly. "We promised. Partners, remember?" Dante stopped, looked at her, and she saw the war in his eyes. Finally, he sat on the edge of the bed. "Victoria Whitmore is in the city. She's been making inquiries about you." Amara's blood ran cold. "Victoria? But I thought she left. You said she went to Europe." "She did, but she's back, and she's been asking questions about our relationship, about Zara, about where you live." His jaw clenched. "My sources say she met with some of Moretti's surviving associates yesterday, people who have reason to hate me." "What does that mean?" "It means," Dante said carefully, "that she might be planning something. Revenge for the engagement, for the humiliation. I don't know yet, but I'm not taking chances." Fear crawled up Amara's spine. "Zara is already being moved to a secure location with your mother. I had them picked up 10 minutes ago. They're safe, Amara. I promise you they're safe." "Without asking me?" Anger flared through her fear. "Dante, you can't just—" "Yes, I can." His voice was steel. "When your daughter's safety is at stake, I will do whatever's necessary. You can be angry at me later. Right now, I need to know you're both protected." Amara wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence and her right to make decisions about her own child. But she looked into Dante's eyes and saw genuine terror there. Fear that something might happen to Zara, to her, fear that his world might destroy the family he'd built. "Where are they?" she asked instead. "A house upstate, completely off the grid, full security detail. No one knows about it except my most trusted people." He took her hand. "I need you to go there too, just until I handle this. Handle Victoria. Handle whatever threat she represents." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "Please, Amara. Let me do this. Let me keep you safe." Amara thought about Victoria's cruelty, about the way she'd tried to destroy her life over a bracelet. Thought about what a woman like that might do now, armed with connections to Dante's enemies and a burning need for revenge. "Okay," she said. "But Dante, come back to us. Whatever you have to do, however you have to do it, just come back." Relief flooded his face. He kissed her, deep and desperate. "Always. I will always come back to you." The safe house was beautiful, a sprawling estate surrounded by woods, completely isolated from the outside world. Zara thought it was an adventure, thrilled by the idea of a special vacation with Grandma. Amara's mother was less convinced. "What's really going on?" Patricia asked when Zara was out of earshot, exploring the massive playroom Dante had somehow prepared in advance. "Victoria's back, making threats." Patricia's expression darkened. "That woman, what does Dante plan to do?" "I don't know." Amara stared out the window at the security guards patrolling the perimeter. "And I'm not sure I want to know." "Baby." Her mother's hand settled on her shoulder. "Are you happy? Really happy? Because all this, the danger, the violence, living with a man who has people killed, is that really what you want for yourself? For Zara?" Amara thought about the question she'd been asking herself for 6 months. "I love him, Mama. I love him in a way that terrifies me, And yes, his world is dangerous, but he makes me feel like I matter. Like we matter. He treats Zara like she's his own daughter. Her voice caught. He makes me feel safe, even when everything around us is chaos. Love isn't always enough, baby. I know, but sometimes it has to be. They stayed at the safe house for 3 days. 3 days of waiting, of jumping at every phone call, of trying to keep Zara entertained while Amara's nerves stretched tighter and tighter. Dante called twice a day, his voice calm and reassuring, telling her everything was fine, that he was handling the situation, that she'd be home soon. But Amara could hear the lie in his voice. Something was wrong. On the 3rd night, Amara's phone rang at 2 a.m. Not Dante's number. Mrs. Chen's.
Hello? Amara.
Mrs. Chen's voice was tight with fear.
You need to come back to the city, now.
What happened?
Where's Dante?
He's alive. But he's... Just come. Please. He needs you. The drive back to the city was the longest 2 hours of Amara's life. She left Zara with her mother and the security detail, ignoring Patricia's protests, knowing only that Dante needed her and nothing else mattered. Mrs. Chen met her at the estate, her face pale.
He's in his study. He won't let anyone in, won't talk to anyone. But maybe he'll talk to you.
Amara ran through the house, her heart pounding. She burst into the study without knocking and stopped dead. Dante sat behind his desk, a bottle of vodka in front of him, his shirt stained with blood. Not his own, she realized with sick relief. His hands were raw and bruised, his face a mask of devastation.
Dante.
She moved toward him.
What happened? I killed her.
His voice was hollow.
Victoria. She came after you, Amara. Had a whole plan. Kidnap you. Torture you. Make me watch. She'd allied with Moretti's nephew. Promised him information about my operations in exchange for helping her destroy you.
Amara's legs went weak. She sank into the chair across from him.
But you stopped her. I stopped her.
Dante finally looked at her, and Amara saw anguish in his eyes.
I killed her with my bare hands, Amara. And her accomplices, and everyone who helped her plan this. I burned them all.
Okay. Amara's voice was surprisingly steady.
Okay. You don't understand.
He stood abruptly, paced to the window.
I tortured her first. Made her tell me everything. Made her beg for mercy I wasn't going to give. And the whole time, all I could think about was what she wanted to do to you. What she would have done if I hadn't found out in time. And His voice broke. I became a monster, Amara. I became exactly what my father was. What I swore I'd never be. And I'd do it again. I'd do worse if it meant keeping you and Zara safe.
Amara crossed to him, turned him to face her. Look at me. He met her eyes, and she saw the fear there. Fear that she'd finally see him for what he was, and walk away.
You are not a monster, she said firmly. You protected your family. That's what you did. Yes, it was violent. Yes, it was brutal. But Dante, she was coming after us. After Zara. And you stopped her. I should feel guilty, Dante whispered. I should feel something other than satisfaction that she's dead. But I don't. All I feel is relief that she can never hurt you again. Then feel that.
Amara cupped his face.
Feel whatever you need to feel. But don't feel guilty for protecting the people you love. Don't apologize for being who you are. You shouldn't have to accept this version of me. I accepted every version of you 6 months ago. She kissed him softly. The gentleman who reads my daughter bedtime stories. The businessman who runs an empire. The killer who eliminates threats. You're all of those things, Dante. And I love all of them.
He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair.
I don't deserve you.
Probably not. Amara managed a shaky laugh.
But you're stuck with me anyway.
They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the adrenaline drained away and reality settled in.
Victoria was dead. The threat was eliminated. They were safe. Marry me, Dante said suddenly.
Amara pulled back to look at him.
What? Marry me. Right now, today, tomorrow. I don't care when. But marry me, Amara. Make it official. Let me be Zara's father legally, not just in my heart. Let me give you both my name, my protection, everything I have. Dante, you're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. I've never been more clear about anything in my life. He took her hands. I love you. I love Zara. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine, and I'm yours. I want to build something real, something lasting. I want normal and domestic and boring. I want to argue about whose turn it is to do dishes and watch Zara grow up and grow old with you. Tears streamed down Amara's face. You're a mafia boss. You don't do normal. Then I'll learn. His smile was crooked, vulnerable. Teach me, Amara. Teach me how to be the man you deserve. She thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a false accusation in a marble foyer to this moment, standing in a study that smelled like vodka and violence, being proposed to by a man with blood on his shirt and love in his eyes. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly right. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Dante's kiss was fierce and claiming, and Amara melted into it, into him, into the promise of a future built on an impossible foundation of violence and love. Epilogue. 1 year later, Amara stood in the garden of the Russo estate, her estate now, watching her daughter chase butterflies in a dress that cost more than Amara used to make in a month. Zara was 7 now, confident and happy, calling Dante Papa without hesitation. Dante appeared behind her, wrapped his arms around her growing belly. How are you feeling? Huge. Amara leaned back against him. This baby is trying to kick its way out early. Just like his mother. Impatient. Dante's hand splayed across her stomach, feeling their son move. 3 more weeks. If we make it that long. They watched Zara play, this little girl who'd inherited Dante's fearlessness and Amara's kindness, who had no idea that the man she called Papa had killed to protect her, who lived in a world of privilege built on a foundation of violence. Do you ever regret it? Dante asked quietly. Choosing this life? Amara thought about the scared girl who'd stood in a marble foyer clutching cleaning supplies, accused of a crime she hadn't committed. Thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd gained, how deeply she'd fallen in love with a man who'd wage war to keep her safe. Not for a second, she said. Dante kissed her temple. I love you, Mrs. Russo. I love you too, Amara replied, even though you're completely insane. Especially because I'm insane. Zara ran up to them, breathless and grinning. Papa! Mama! Can we have ice cream before dinner? Dante looked at Amara, who rolled her eyes. Fine, but just this once. You said that yesterday, Zara pointed out with the devastating logic of children. Then I guess we're establishing a pattern, Amara laughed. They walked into the house together, Dante carrying Zara on his shoulders, Amara waddling beside them, their family complete and imperfect and absolutely real. And in that moment, despite everything, despite the darkness that still lurked at the edges of their life, Amara Hayes Russo was completely, perfectly happy. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.